Hey guys, Tom from Metalloud. Today I want to review the album Watching Movies with the Sound Off by rapper Mac Miller.
People worship these idols till they come in contact with God. Hoses all my disciples, you get mine.
So Mac Miller is a Pittsburgh rapper who's kind of very controversial in the rap scene and in general. He kind of broke through with his mixtapes and his random singles that he released, and the videos kind of became big through YouTube a lot. And that's actually how I found him with one of his singles, Donald Trump. And from his start, he was kind of this light-hearted rapper. He kind of considered himself what he called backpack rapper. It was kind of, just on the streets, do-it-yourself kind of rapper, just kind of rapping about everyday life and just being a kid. And it was kind of fun, lightheartedness to it. And as he kind of started to expand and become a bigger artist, he kind of had this transition where he kind of fell off a little bit. His album Blue Slide Park was actually kind of a high point, kind of mixed his lightheartedness and his start as a backpack rap, as he called it, with these upbeat kind of poppy rap songs. And there were also some hints at expansion in terms of being a little bit more introspective and a little darker. But overall, it was a very upbeat album in general. After Blue Slide Park, he kind of started sliding into talking about, a lot of his songs became about drug use, and it really kind of was a little bit off-putting. It felt like a kid who was just discovering drugs for the first time and talking about how great they are and how they expand your mind and all this stuff. And it really just didn't do much. He kind of lost a lot of his positive elements. His flows kind of became a little bit weaker. His instrumentals, even though he wasn't fully responsible for those, they kind of were a little bit off. His lyrical content became a little bit just out there, and it lost a lot of the lightheartedness of the early days, but it wasn't replaced with anything substantial. And then this album, Watching Movies with the Sound Off, comes out, and it still continues a lot of those elements of the influence of the drug use and things like that, but this is a much better album. His flows are definitely much stronger on this album. There's a lot of outside producers who contributed to this track, like Flying Lotus, and you have Jay Electronica on here, and Earl Sweatshirt, and there's really, instrumentally, it's a much stronger album than anything he's really done in the past, but lyrically, it's also a much more introspective album. He kind of goes off of the looking at the outside, looking at materialistic things like shoes and all these getting money and all these things, and kind of looks at himself a lot more on this album. There's still a lot of those older elements on there. There's still a lot of talking about his cockiness and things like that, but there's also a lot of uncertainty on this album. It's a much darker album in general. He talks about what his father recognized him at this point. He's changed so much since his early days, talking about where he's come from, talking about how he's not really sure of himself anymore. His kind of experimentation with the drug use has almost like killed him, and it's taking a deeper look at them. There's a lot more existential issues dealt with on this album, and I feel it's a much better album than anything he's really done in the past for those reasons. There's still a lot not to like about Mac Miller. I can understand where people get that. A lot of his lyrical content could be ranging from just cringeworthy, cheesy lines to kind of just misogynistic, degrading women type things, which is kind of typical of a lot of rap, especially mainstream rap, rapping about hoes and stuff like that. And it's become almost a parody of itself at this point in a lot of rap artists. Mac Miller doesn't really kind of try to break away from that or expand his horizons in any way. He's not a progressive rap artist. This is not something you're gonna show to your mom. But in terms of maturity, it is in general a much more mature album than most artists are putting out there today. His song about a dead friend is actually fairly powerful and moving, and doesn't come off as this whining ballad as some can, sometimes it can happen with other artists. And as I mentioned in the beginning, the instrumentals on this album are just absolutely tremendous. I mean, if you took out Mac Miller's rapping from this album and just made it an instrumental album, this would hold up. Every track is wonderfully produced. The warped bass lines, the just odd guitar tones that are on here, the drumming, the kind of backwards song elements, his kind of vocal manipulation, things like that, voice modulation, it all leads to this very interesting kind of psychedelic, trippy sound on a lot of the songs, and you kind of almost get this atmospheric sense to it. It puts you in another place, and it's kind of cool to listen to that. Just like I said, even if you took out the lyrics on this and you took out the rapping, it's an awesome instrumentals album to listen to in general. It's top notch. So like I said, this is not really an album you're gonna take home to your mom and dad and show them. Not really gonna break anybody out who doesn't like rap music. It's not really going to kind of convince anybody that doesn't like Mac Miller. You still have that cheesy Mac Miller sound on here. It's a lot more toned down. At least said, he's taking a much darker approach to things. And for that, it's kind of very introspective into Mac Miller's mind at this point, and that's why I feel it is actually a very strong rap album. It's probably one of my favorite albums that was released in 2013. But overall, I can see how it's not really going to convince people who can't deal with Mac Miller and really who don't like rap. But other than that, this is a fantastic album.